Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You knew we know.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Hey, boy, don't feel my world untrue. Yeah, I want to talk to you. My world can be true if you do what I tell you to. I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio for Saturday, the 30th of April, 2016. I'm your host, Larry Love. We're here every Saturday. We did miss last week, but we're here every Saturday to bring you the latest information on medical cannabis and recreational use of cannabis from all over the globe. This week, we have, of course, a bunch of news for you, but we also have a second part of a interview we did with Reggie Gaudino from Steephill. We're going to talk about, do we have it wrong? Is sativa and indica and afghanica and ruderalis, do we have it all mixed up and wrong? So we're going to talk about that history, and we're also going to have Dr. Andrew Medvedovsky on the interview later in the show, talking about New Jersey and what his offices have to offer the patients of New Jersey and what's happening in the New Jersey medical cannabis program, which is sort of messed up because of the governor. But first, as always, I've got news for you.
1, 2, 3.
Yes, I've got news for you. This first one is how you can dominate depression with these 8 delightful strains. This is from marijuanaworldnews.com. And this is just dated just the other day. It's estimated that there are 350 million people of all ages who suffer from depression globally. Cannabis has been proven to dominate depression as long as the appropriate strain is selected. This is a list that you could start with when searching for the right strain for you. The first one that they talk about is Blue Dream. Blue Dream is a sativa-dominated hybrid originating in California and has achieved legendary status among West Coast strains. Next up is Girl Scout Cookies. Girl Scout Cookies, or GSC, is an OG Kush and Durban Poison hybrid cross whose reputation grew too large to stay within the borders of California. And so now it's available everywhere. It's won lots of awards as well. Next up is Blue Cheese. Blue Cheese is an indica cross created by crossing a blueberry male with the original United Kingdom cheese, which is a skunk #1 phenotype, female. And next up after that is Skywalker OG. Skywalker OG is a potent indica-dominant hybrid strain that may just take you to a galaxy far, far away. But it's also good. Of course, you have to watch your dosage with all of these. Good for your depression. Chocolope. DNA Genetics developed Chocolope by crossing chocolate Thai with cantaloupe haze. This was started back where the chocolate strains were around in the 80s. It's a hefty sativa bud giving an earthy sweet coffee flavor. Death Star. Death Star is a potent cross of Sensi Star and Sour Diesel. And it has shared sativa and indica effects. Next up, Hindu Kush. Hindu Kush is a pure indica strain named after the mountain range stretching 500 miles between Pakistan and Afghanistan, where it originated. And finally, on this list of strains good for depression is Purple Haze, named after the Jimi Hendrix 1967 classic. Purple Haze delivers a dreamy burst of euphoria that brings veteran consumers back to their psychedelic heyday. Once again, whenever you try a new strain, it's always best to take 1 or 2 puffs, see how it affects you. If you need more, take more. If not, then you're fine for a while. Now, moving on to what's happening around the United States. In Florida, Attorney John Morgan has been championing the medical marijuana program, and he has spent lots of money, millions of dollars. It got defeated barely last time, and so he's working on it again. Here is Attorney John Morgan, who's challenging his medical cannabis opponent to a debate. He's working hard to make it work.
A slam dunk. There's a challenger, and it is a familiar name, not a familiar face. Channel 9 anchor Warmouth sat down with a local attorney who's behind the push, and Greg, he's challenging businessman Mel Sempler to a debate on RAR.
He is, Martha. Mel Sempler is a former U.S. ambassador and a real estate developer from the Tampa area, but he's also the chief opponent tonight to medical marijuana. Today, John Morgan called him out on social media, calling him, and I quote, Mel the Moocher. In a taping for this week's Central Florida Spotlight, John Morgan came out swinging and hitting Mel Sempler on air and online.
Mel Sembler's good at putting on knee pads and going to his rich friends and asking for money. If he's so rich, if he's so influential, if he believes in this so much, put your own money up.
Sempler or his organization did not respond to our request for an interview or comment, and that left the door wide open for Morgan to take his medical marijuana opponent to task.
Mel Sembler is a misguided 90-year-old man who wants to stir up trouble, but he's not going to get to live in the shadows this time, Greg.
And he's taking him on Twitter, too, tweeting out, I don't think Mel Sembler has any money. Why does he not write a check for $10 million? It's his cause. Step up, big boy, and match my $7 million. John, this almost sounds like a page out of the Donald Trump.
Well, I said I'm channeling Donald Trump tongue-in-cheek.
And then this challenge.
Here's my invitation to Mel Sembler. If he's got any guts, debate me here.
We would welcome that. Sembler has been called an anti-drug crusader and has pledged to begin a fundraising drive to defeat the medical marijuana initiative. Morgan, as you can see, is just as motivated to get this initiative passed. We're just getting started, and like the presidential race, all is fair in love, war, and politics.
And politics. Politics is what ruins, of course, getting this great plan out to people. And here is the next clip that I found for you this week. Dr. Mark Thornton explains how government intervention actually allows the black market to flourish. Okay, and we should be getting rid of the black market with these programs and so forth. So here is this report.
The question is about why is there still a black market in places where the drugs are somewhat legalized. This is really happening systematically. In Colorado, drug legalization has not shut down the black market, and most of the black market is still there, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that, well, you've got all these rules and regulations and taxes and licensing that you have to comply with, and plus the fact that under these restricted conditions, the price that legal marijuana is being sold at is still pretty high. And so there's still that profit margin there for the illegal growers. And so a lot of it has to do with the fact that we haven't legalized fully enough, and as a result, the black market continues.
So with regulation, and if it's done the right way, without so many restrictions for people, you know, we can flourish with our programs, and the black market will go away. Well, it'll be on a smaller basis for sure. Also in Colorado, former Bronco player is pushing for research into cannabis for NFL players. We know how it actually protects the brain and can give relief, so here is this report.
Former Broncos quarterback is convinced a compound found in cannabis can help football players suffering from brain trauma. Jake Plummer sat down with our Kathy Walsh to talk about his campaign for medical research.
Jake Plummer with a sneak. Jake is at the goal line, and Jake's got a Denver touchdown.
He played 10 seasons in the NFL, his final 4 with the Denver Broncos.
I wouldn't change a thing about it because I played for the fun and the love of the game.
Quarterback Jake Plummer took countless hits before he retired.
I'm glad I called it quits when I did.
He wonders if those hits will come back to haunt him.
Found myself asking the question, was it worth it? And still to this day ask that question.
Plummer and 4 other former players appear in a new public service campaign, When the Bright Lights Fade.
You could probably ask most of them have they thought about suicide, and I'm sure a lot of them will tell you they have.
The campaign explains chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, brain trauma. It's believed 96% of former NFL players suffer from it.
A lot of guys suffer from concussions, and it's a big thing now. I wish it would have been taken more serious back when I was playing.
The campaign is a call to action, fundraising for research into cannabidiol, CBD. Plummer has taken it for about a year.
I can attest that it's definitely helped me, not just inflammation, but my mind, my mental clarity, my mood swings. I'm less aggressive if someone makes me mad.
Colorado is ground zero for CBD because of the Stanley brothers. The marijuana growers discovered a strain of cannabis they called hippie's disappointment. So low in THC it couldn't get you high. But a mother gave the CBD oil to her epileptic daughter and says 300 seizures a week have nearly stopped. It's now called Charlotte's Web. Thousands of families and at least one former quarterback swear by it.
It's kind of a wonder medicine in my mind.
I think we have a tool here that can potentially help former players, current players, and the sport itself.
Joel Stanley hopes to raise $100,000 to fund research at Johns Hopkins.
It's time to take all this mountain of anecdotal evidence and turn it into real, meaningful data.
Stanley knows the stigma is marijuana.
If this compound, CBD, came from dandelion flower, it'd be so much easier to raise the money, get the research done.
What have you heard from the NFL?
Nothing yet.
But the former player and grower are undeterred. They believe in CBD, and they believe it's time to prove its power. Kathy Walsh, CBS 4 News.
And of course, I don't need to remind my regular listeners that it's just not CBD alone. At least a 1-to-1 ratio with THC is really best to make the entourage effect that everybody talks about work. Of course, that entourage effect was discovered in Israel. Israel has been 30, 40 years ahead of the game in studying this plant and finding out what's in the plant and what to do with it. A group of rabbis have decided that this plant is kosher and can be used during the holidays and so forth. And here is this report.
This weekend marked the beginning of Passover, where Jews celebrate their freedom from slavery in Egypt. For those who observe, a significant feature of the holiday involves abstaining from leavened bread and other foods to acknowledge the haste of their departure. So there's news that something new has been added to the list of things that can be consumed during the holiday. It's pot. Yes, marijuana. Earlier this week, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, one of the leading authorities in the Israeli ultra-Orthodox community, ruled that medicinal marijuana is, in fact, kosher, meaning that it can be ingested, or in this case, inhaled, over the 8-day celebration of Passover. In a video posted online this week, Rabbi Kanievsky can be seen conferring with other rabbis over a bundle of marijuana leaves, speaking in both Hebrew and Yiddish, and ultimately blessing the plant. So how did the ruling come about?
Ahead of the festival, a group in Israel called Siach, which is a pro-marijuana group, they went to the leading living authority on Jewish law to ask if the consumption of marijuana would be permissible during the festival of Passover.
Raoul Woodcliff is breaking news editor at the Times of Israel. He says that while the news is amusing, it's not really all that earth-shattering for observant Jews.
The significance is more that such a prominent rabbi has given this ruling, but I don't think there are many people that were waiting on Seder night, unsure about what the status is of their stash.
So if you were thinking of inviting friends over for a puff on Passover, we should emphasize that the decision refers to medicinal marijuana. So there it is.
So don't forget, puff, puff, pass it over to me. Now, no buzz medical pot laws are proving problematic for patients and lawmakers. Again, like I just said about the entourage effect, it's really proving that this is not good for the patients that really need the full plant. So here is this.
Abby is a fun-loving, somewhat gregarious, goofy, silly little girl who happens to have autism. When Abby was a little over 3 years old, it was actually 2 years ago at this time, she started severely injuring herself by biting. She began just plain raging. I described them as demonic rages. We went through several months of needing to restrain her for hours at a time, almost every day. We tried medicines like Risperidone, Abilify, Zoloft, Haldol, Seroquel. We tried everything that was on the market. And at the time, she was almost 4, or just turned 4. And I picked her up at school, and 3 teachers were walking her out to the car to meet me, holding her like a battering ram. And the front teacher had on Taekwondo arm guards to keep from getting bit. And turns out they had to restrain her the entire 4 hours of school that day. At the time, she was only going to school half day. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I did a ton of research about cannabis and what it's doing for these kids, what it could possibly do for Abby. I was still scared to try it. I was still worried that Department of Family and Children's Services would somehow find out, show up at the door, and take my daughter away. Here I have an illegal substance in my house in the state of Georgia. But after I saw her teachers walking her out like that, that was it. I didn't care anymore. I thought, take me to jail. I ended up giving her her first dose, and in 4 days I had her weaned off the seizure meds and only on the cannabis oil.
Good girl.
And I'm telling you, the raging stopped, completely stopped. I'm still blown away with how she reacts. We can go for walks, we can play with toys, I can help her learn to eat with a spoon, I can do all of these things that you want to do for your child with autism who isn't raging so much that they can't think about anything else but the raging. Her ability to even just look you in the eye, it never happened before, not even maybe a split second. She would catch your eye and then do this.
You'll never know.
Now she will stare right into your eyes for a good 5 or 10 seconds, which is a millennium to us. For us, it has been the best thing to ever happen to us. And certainly the best thing to ever happen for her.
Amazing things are beginning to happen for a lot of people once they have access to this wonderful cannabis plant. There's some brothers up in Massachusetts who are getting into the cannabis testing business, and they are putting together a cutting-edge company. Here is this report from Massachusetts.
3 local brothers are using marijuana in a different way.
They're trying to blaze a medical trail to treat children who can't find help any other way. 7's Chris Anderson explains the growing potential behind this powerful plant.
You have to work very closely in communication with your patient.
This conference at Harvard Medical School is the first of its kind.
The debate should now be about how to provide an access.
Doctors and scholars coming together to figure out if marijuana can be used to treat many different illnesses.
They're saying, we have children who are dying, we have children who are seizing every minute, and they can be helped, potentially helped, and many of them helped by using cannabis.
The center of this gathering, 3 brothers from Woburn who believe marijuana can help people with epilepsy.
They say it's impossible for 3 brothers to work together, and I would say it's almost impossible, but not quite. We have figured it out.
The McKernan brothers, Brian, Brendan, and Kevin, are at the core of a company called Cortigen. Their mission right now, analyze patient DNA samples to determine a treatment course and unlock the DNA of marijuana.
These 2 industries are colliding, and they're both rapid growth industries. They're probably two of the most high growth industries in our country right now.
There's two different types of chips that we sequence on.
Kevin knows DNA. He spent years working with the original crew that mapped the human genome at MIT 10 years ago.
And that allows us to actually image each one
Now,
of
they're using that breakthrough to focus on genes tied to neurological disorders, like epilepsy.
It looks like a starry night. Well, every one of those stars is a little piece of DNA.
Scientists have mapped the human genome, but no one has mapped marijuana yet. So elsewhere in the lab, Kevin is exploring marijuana DNA to learn which strains of the plant work best for treatment.
Right now, we're just doing fingerprints to get us a sense that you have a signature of what these things are, but we don't know what all the genes do yet.
Medical marijuana isn't appropriate for everyone, but the brothers say it's made a difference in these young lives.
There's clearly no doubt that there are medical benefits to cannabis for certain patients under certain conditions, and we need to learn how, why, when, where, who. And that's what we're trying to do.
Now, most people think of medical marijuana as something you smoke, but the children getting this experimental treatment for epilepsy take the marijuana as a liquid extract that does not contain the molecules that cause the high. In the newsroom, Chris Anderson, 7 News.
Yes, not the molecule that causes the high. Now, of course, that's great for children, but adults do need the effect that the high produces and combines with the other cannabinoids that are in the cannabis. Now, pot tourism is going to be huge. I've said it before, I think it's over in Amsterdam, and we've got some of the greatest cannabis here in the States, and Las Vegas, Nevada is going to be the place. But in Oregon, which is a new fairly new cannabis legalization for adults, they are opening up their first cannabis campus, aiming to boost pot tourism. So if you're going to Portland, this might be a great place for you to check out.
Well, from back alley dealer to small dispensary, the big change in legal marijuana is now the rise of the mega pot shop.
K2's Reed Andrews is in Northeast Portland with the story. And Reed, you're at a brewery. How does that play into all this?
Well, Chalice Farms is trying to emulate wineries and breweries. Here at Fire on the Mountain in Northeast Portland, if they operate just like a pot dispensary, all you'd be able to do is get a six-pack or get your growler filled up. But instead, you can meet your brewer. And if you have enough time, you can actually come out back and see where your brew is beered. And being able to see the process behind your vice of choice is something that's coming to cannabis. At Portland International, there are countless reasons why people fly into Oregon.
We like to go to the coast.
Kiteboarding, windsurfing, the pure beauty of it, I think.
William Simpson with Chalice Farms wants cannabis added to the list.
It is the epicenter of some of the best cannabis in the world.
And tourism is something he's banking on.
2.5 miles directly off of the airport, off the airplane, you can come into Chalice Farms and see cannabis and see the entire campus experience like going to a brewery.
It's the state's first marijuana campus, 30,000 square feet. From where you buy the pot, you can peek through the glass and see how the extracts are made.
I'm a huge geek at heart.
In the kitchen, they're trying to perfect their edible recipes.
We're working on the truffle line right now, which is a lemon.
Simpson admits he's gone overboard when it comes to this vault to store excess marijuana.
It's overkill, frankly, but why not?
And soon people can tour where his cannabis is grown. It may seem over the top, but Simpson hopes others follow his lead, so Oregon becomes a marijuana destination, attracting millions in tourism dollars.
I want to see, frankly, all of the dispensaries and companies in Oregon look phenomenal.
One big difference between dispensaries and breweries, well, at breweries you can consume on site. Smoking a joint at a dispensary or a grow site, that is not allowed. In Northeast Portland tonight, Reed Andrews, K2 News, Deb and Steve.
So there's still a lot of obviously things to be worked out. Legalization for adults is new. Colorado has the same problem where you can, as a visitor to the state, if you're above 21, you can purchase cannabis, but there's really no place to smoke it because you can't smoke it in public. So these are things that will get worked out. There needs to be hash bars, just like there's bars for alcohol. If you're going to legalize and tax and regulate like alcohol, then we need a place to hang and consume. This next piece is produced by Steephill Labs about genetics with Reggie Gaudino, who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago. First, I'm going to play this clip produced by them, and then after that, a little piece that I edited out of our interview with Reggie a couple of weeks ago, but it's so interesting that I'm going to play it today. So first, here is this Steephill produced clip about genetics.
Blue Dream. It'll give you that lovely euphoria. But of course, if you want some wings, sour diesel is definitely the way to go. The dizzying number of cannabis strains each have a unique personality, but how a specific variety reacts within your body is still largely a scientific mystery. That's partly because marijuana is still a Schedule I drug, which makes it pretty difficult to research.
We had this anecdotal evidence. We knew that some of the compounds were useful. Now it's time to get serious about it and to understand what those compounds are so that we can really put it to good use.
A company in Berkeley, California, of course, is decoding all those popular strains to unlock the true potential of cannabis.
Steephill is a cannabis analytics lab, and what that means is that we are interested in identifying basically everything that we can about cannabis.
The lab does quality control for dispensaries that want to be 100% sure that their product is safe. It tests for pesticides, for instance, and determines if mold or fungus has infected a sample.
And then there's the chemical profiling that we do, which is important to be able to do accurate dosing and to determine, whether or not a particular strain even has the compound that you need. Some strains are high in THC, some strains are high in CBD.
Those are two examples of compounds called cannabinoids, but there's another class called terpenoids. Those molecules are what make a strain smell piney or lemony or mangoey, but they could also have an effect on how the plant makes you feel.
And it's the synergistic interaction between what they call the entourage effect, the cannabinoids, the terpenes, the flavonoids, and probably even some other things we haven't even begun to really realize, that really is important to be able to say, oh, this strain is good for this because of these things.
Once they know more about the chemical makeup of each strain, genetic mapping could allow Steephill to work with breeders to improve their strains.
Chemical testing and profiling and genetic testing is of vital importance because it allows us to understand the plant in a way that allows us to treat it as a bona fide medicine.
Of which it is. Now, Reggie was on the show a couple weeks ago, and if you haven't heard that, I advise you to go back and listen to it. It was a great interview. I had to edit a few things out for time, but I think what we talked about was, pretty interesting. So I'm going to play this clip. I had asked Reggie, we were talking about, different strains, and back in the day, Gold Colombian, which is like the holy grail for a lot of people my age, was the seediest pot, marijuana, cannabis, weed, ganja, that I've ever had. Yet it was the most heady, psychedelic sort of effect. So, I asked him, everybody was, after, the Colombian was very prominent, everyone got into sensimilla, which obviously we know that the plant develops more THC and cannabinoids, supposedly, my understanding, when you don't pollinate it and make seeds, because the energy of the plant goes into making seeds. So I asked him about that, and he'll comment on that. And then we go right into, do we have it wrong? Is indica not indica? Is it really sativa? What is, the difference? How did it happen that we have it wrong? So here is this clip with Reggie.
But I want to say one thing. The reason why that was such a good batch of marijuana, even though it was seedy, is so the plant actually increases production of THC and CBD on the carpels that are the leaves right around the seed, because THC is actually a protectant. So it helps block UV. It looks kind of like melatonin, right? So it helps block UV from damaging the seed, but it also acts as a natural insecticide. So anything that eats enough of the carpel or to go after the seed is going to have enough THC in them that it's going to make them lethargic. So what you'll see is you'll see caterpillars suddenly exposed on a leaf, when a caterpillar would normally be on the underside of the leaf, right? So it causes things to slow down. It causes them to have their own, psychedelic reaction, I guess. I mean, or at least some sort of response that makes them basically dead, right? So if it's exposed, or if a rabbit eats a plant and then lays down for a half an hour because it's kind of stoned, then what ends up happening is those creatures get eaten, and it reduces the predation on the entire area, right?
So how are they getting stoned when it's in its acid form?
Because first of all, there is typically, right, almost all plants do have some level of delta-9 conversion. So it happens at a naturally low level. So when we test, we'll see that almost every plant will have some level of THC, and not all organisms respond like us. So for instance, dogs have a much lower threshold, and what we take in as a human could actually put a dog into convulsions okay. So every organism has a different threshold.
Right.
So it does. So for some organisms, it doesn't take that much for them to become lethargic or to have that response. And it may not always be the THC that's doing it. It could be some of the other things as well, like beta-myrcene or linalool, or not the cannabinoids, but it could be some of the terpenes, right? That are playing into that responses.
Interesting. I can remember. Some dogs in my family maybe ate a joint by accident once, that was laying around, and they did get lethargic and so forth. So it's all about dosage, obviously. That's the important thing, because I know that there's veterinarians that are now using cannabis and CBD and even with THC for end life to help animals and dogs and so forth. So there's a future there with pets.
Absolutely.
Real briefly, I know you have to go, but and I'm probably going to ask you a question that takes more time than we have. But where are you with the cannabis, sativa, indica, afghanica? Do we have it wrong? I mean, Todd McCormick and some of these guys that have been around for a long time, they talk about we have it wrong. That
we do.
Okay, so can you give us a short term explanation of that?
So actually, one of the things that we do at Steephill is, so not only did we develop these tests, but we're also heavily into DNA sequencing. So that's part of what we do with the CGRI. And so what our evidence shows is that there are, I guess what the terminology is now being called narrow-leaf and broadleaf drug types, narrow-leaf and broadleaf hemp varieties, right? So, and what we've seen, and actually I can, if you send me your email, I will send you a diagram that came out of a paper that we published, or we submitted for publication with CGRI, and so there's clearly everything comes from a common ancestor. Hold on a second. Sorry about that.
Go for it, dude.
No. It's the CFO at the company, and
just blow off the CFO.
Exactly. So they blow me off all the time. So, and so what we found is that there is a common ancestor to all of them, right? So when you look at this diagram, they all focus back to one spot, and you can definitely see that there are lineages or groupings, right? So there's a typical hemp class. There's a narrow-leaf drug class, which is the sativas, afghanicas, right? And then there's the broadleaf class, which is more like the indicas and the Southeast Asian kind of, like, so the Thai stick stuff. A lot of these things which were not the equatorial sativas, right? So, and then there's a branch that looks like it may have been outbred with something like a ruderalis or something like that. So we can clearly see from the DNA signatures that there are definite clusters, and those clusters transcend sativa or indica, because what we've found is that what really makes a sativa or indica is that unique combination of cannabinoids and terpenes, and you can find that those groupings in either broadleaf or narrowleaf, right? So that is what first gave us the idea that, wait a second, the chemical profiles and the genetic profiles are at odds with each other. And so there's got to be some higher organization that we're looking at. So, and very interestingly, what came out of it is that, let's say in the what are the narrowleaf drug types, right, which are typically the sativas. Well, in the middle of that block, you have this outcropping of CBD dominant, quote unquote, sativas, right? So, and CBD dominance was typically thought to be an indica kind of trait, right? Mm-hmm. So we clearly see that it's not about THC and CBD, and because of our focus on that, we have possibly been mischaracterizing all of these things. What the other thing that we think is happening too is, now that we've got some of these genetics, kind of laid down, we see that you can take a sativa, and if you take a sativa and you grow it under the wrong conditions, the leaf morphology changes and it starts to look more like an indica, right? So there's some plasticity in the genetics that allow the plant to adapt rapidly. Remember, things that can move under negative selection pressure, they get up, they walk away, right? So plants can't do that. So plants have to be able to adapt to a wide variety, right? So, and I think what's ended up happening as humans have started moving and taking what they had with them as hemp or the drug varieties with them, and they put them down other places, right? What we're seeing is that these things are just adapting
to the
and
environment.
Changing.
They're adapting to their environment.
So
they're surviving under the conditions that they were being grown in. Fabulous.
And to do that, what they have to do is, if you are normally something that grows tall and lanky with skinny seeds, because you can get sun, all year round, when you go to a higher climb, when you only get sun 5 months of the year, suddenly things have to change because you're not going to be able to use the same program. So there's that level of plasticity. And it's interesting because now some of these crops like citrus make more sense, right? So citrus, which are called polyploid, right? So they have more than 2 copies of the chromosomes. They'll have 4, 5, 6, 9 copies of the chromosomes. Well, they carry that junk around because it's not really junk. It's what helps them to get to other programs that help them survive in different conditions. So
wow. So the same batch of F2 seeds, let's say, which is hopefully stabilized, sometimes.
You're not stable until you hit like between F8 and F10.
Really? Okay. Well, let's say you took the F8, F10 seeds, okay, and you grew it in 3 different environments. You'd be getting
three different types of plants.
Wow, that's incredible. That's great, man. So who do you think got it wrong, and how far back when they made things? This is thin leaf is sativa, broad is indica. Who was it that was, experimenting and writing about cannabis back then that sort of threw us off track with that?
I think that goes back to like possibly as early as whenever Linnaeus was. I forget him, but it's clear that early on, guys like Darwin and Linnaeus and those people who were crucial in getting our naming conventions going, they found these things and started calling them, so the naming convention goes back a long time. I'd say at least 1800s, if not sooner. And because early on, if you look at the ancient Chinese, ancient, Egyptian texts where there was clearly use of cannabis as a medicine. So it actually goes back more than a couple hundred years. It goes back thousands of years, right? And then actually there was an ancient Egyptian or Middle Eastern text that showed that some sheik's son had what they call the quaking disease, right? So
like epilepsy, yeah, right,
and that the court physician treated him with an extract of cannabis that cured it, but unfortunately, according to that physician, he said, however, the son was never able to stop taking the cannabis extract. Like it was a bad thing.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
yeah.
right. But it's true. So, and that's exactly what we see today. We're treating kids with CBD, right? And it's helping them, but yet they have to take it forever.
But they also have to take those terrible pharmaceuticals forever when you have a seizure condition. So what would you rather take? The plant that's got no bad side effects, or Tegretol and all that terrible stuff that, I lived with a woman who had seizure condition. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of seizures. So I know how devastating it is. I know how bad it is. But some of those drugs that they have to take are just horrible and make them feel terrible. They don't have a life. So for seizures alone, epilepsy, seizure condition, this plant is just amazing. And of course, I think some of the states that are going with that CBD only, they think they're doing us a favor, is really fucking everything up.
They are.
These
Absolutely.
people. It's just terrible that these right-wing politicians think they're actually doing something for the sick people of their state when they're just setting them back. It's just really horrible. So
Well, again, so this is Steephill's kind of soapbox, right? So the people making the decisions have no idea about what they're talking about. They have no scientific background. They have done no study. And yet they're the ones who are setting the policy for something they don't understand.
Right.
And it can't possibly work. It cannot possibly work.
They're politicians. Did you see the article the other day about Colorado? There's a bunch of Republicans that want to cap all the THC to below 17%. Every product, there'll be nothing higher than that. And so in retort to that article, I wrote, what are these Colorado politicians drinking? Why don't we ban hard liquor, wine, and just sell 3.2 beer?
Yes, there you go.
And then there's
exactly
the analogy.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
Hey, Reggie, man, thanks for your time today. And we'll be right back. That was my rest of my conversation with Reggie Gaudino from Steephill. And he's a very interesting guy. I hope to have him on again soon. We'll be right back with our interview with Dr. Andrew Medvedovsky, talking about what he has to offer the patients of New Jersey and what's happening in the New Jersey Medical Cannabis Program. We'll be right back.
It's all about the 420 MMJ Radio.
And we're back. And online today, I have Dr. Andrew Medvedovsky from New Jersey. He's with the South Jersey Alternative Medicine, which is a provider of medical services for cannabis patients of New Jersey. Welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio, Andrew.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So how did you get involved in cannabis medicine?
So to give you a little background, I started my career as a neurology resident in Virginia. Then I did a fellowship in interventional pain management. And after graduating, I joined RA Pain Services, which is a comprehensive large practice across South New Jersey. And we primarily deal with patients dealing with chronic pain, headaches, neck, back, all various chronic pain conditions. And as part of our practice, obviously, we do various interventions, injections, procedures, and we manage patients who are prescribed various medications, including opioids and so forth.
So let me just jump in for a second. So a couple of years ago, Governor Christie inherited a medical marijuana program. Were you in New Jersey at that time, and what did you have to do to become a registered physician in order to sign people up for the medical cannabis program?
I was not. I moved to New Jersey and joined this program practiced 3 years ago. And because of such high demand and many patients asking about the program, I decided to become enrolled as a provider for this program. The enrollment process really was not that difficult as long as you are a licensed physician in New Jersey and have a DEA number and you're in good standing with the board.
So what about education? Was there education required in order to become a licensed cannabis physician, or did you just do this on your own?
So the state requires the physicians to have a background in addiction or pain management. I'm a board-certified neurologist and pain management specialist, so I've done training in pain management, psychiatry, and addiction medicine, and plus a lot of self-teaching with the medical cannabis and how it can help my patients deal with the conditions.
So what are some of the conditions that New Jersey has on the list for people to get into the program?
Primarily, the most common conditions that we see are the musculoskeletal spasticity, which includes multiple other things within the category: severe spasms, severe intractable cramps, multiple sclerosis, intractable epilepsy. Chronic pain itself is not a acceptable qualifying condition only if it's part of either HIV, cancer, or falls within the category of the intractable musculoskeletal spasticity.
So the medicine that's available in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not an expert on it at all. I was born and raised in Jersey, but I don't know much about the medical cannabis program. But there's nothing for people to smoke. Is that correct?
I'm sorry. Please repeat that again.
What type of cannabis is available? Are the patients allowed to actually smoke cannabis or vaporize cannabis in New Jersey? Or
yes, they are. In New Jersey, only the plant form is currently dispensed. There are no edibles or oils that are available at this time in New Jersey.
So for epilepsy patients and kids and so forth, there's no oil available? Is that?
No. I have about 4 kids currently for tractable epilepsy, and they make oils. All the edibles or the extractions are made by the patients and their families from the plant that they receive at the dispensary.
So they could go and buy an ounce of flower, of bud, and then they would have to make the oil themselves, do the extraction, and make it themselves. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
What will it take to get that change? Since it's interesting because other states they only have like oil, and some of it's actually just CBD oil with no THC in it, and so there's a lot of states that are getting into the cannabis, medical cannabis programs, but they're sort of not doing the whole plant medicine. So what do you think has to be done in order to get edibles, which are most important for a lot of people, and of course oil, which is the real medicine? What has to be done to the program? Do you need a new governor, or
well, actually, New Jersey is very close to having oils that's coming in within the next couple of months, from what I believe, and they're in the process of putting together the extraction process to get the oils. Hopefully within the next 3 to 4 months.
So there's nothing really in the rules against it. They just haven't started making it. Is that what you're saying?
From my understanding, that's correct.
All right. So a patient comes in to see you, and in order to get signed up for the medical cannabis program, what is the process? They come, they talk to you, you examine them, you recommend, yes, I think cannabis would be good for you. How long does it take the state to issue a patient a license after you make your recommendation?
So for me, there's really 2 main avenues into the program. One is for the patients who are already in our pain management practice, who I've been seeing for a number of months, even years, who I believe will be good candidates for the program. In those cases, I would recommend the program, discuss the program, provide them with educational material to review. If they decide that this is for them, I have a coordinator and a nurse educator who works with me and is only working with the medical marijuana program. And the patients would then call them separately, set up a separate appointment for a separate clinic. They'll come in to be educated, to be evaluated, to discuss the medical cannabis program separately. Because of our practice regulations and state laws, we keep it separate and we don't typically combine our general pain management practice with the medical cannabis program. And patients prefer the privacy, have the time to speak with me face-to-face, have the education they need, and have all of the questions answered.
So the name of your practice is South Jersey Alternative Medicine, and you're in Turnersville, New Jersey, which is in South Jersey. How far are people driving and coming from? Because there's only, I believe, very few physicians, and also maybe 4 dispensaries at the most in New Jersey. So how far are people coming from all around the state to see you and to come to these dispensaries?
Most of our patients are from within 1 hour driving distance, and our practice, RA Pain Services, has about 11 locations from Mount Laurel, New Jersey, all the way down to Somers Point, Galloway. So we have patients driving up from all of those areas to come see me for the medical marijuana program. What I think and I believe makes our program different is the level of attention and education the patients receive. We have an entire team of staff that are dedicated strictly for this program, and they're available all the time to answer all questions, provide education, speak about their condition, and so forth. I'm also available for the patients to discuss their concerns, conditions, issues, whatever may arise.
So obviously dosage is very, very important, especially if you're dealing with a patient that has never had cannabis in their system before. I managed for 2 years a dispensary here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, so I got to meet a lot of patients. I got to counsel them and sort of introduce them to cannabis when they weren't, if they didn't have any experience. So how do you start someone off so that they don't have a bad experience the first time, and so they will embrace the fact that this medicine can help them? Tell me how you start a first-time patient off.
So someone who has never smoked cannabis and is not a smoker, I recommend them to get a vaporizer, or if they are very concerned about the idea of the smell or the actual inhalation, to try either to make edibles or to look into some sort of oil form. I recommend for all patients to start the cannabis at the lowest dose, and usually at night, and to see how they react to it and what their symptoms will be like, what will change, what will improve. And I also recommend to obtain multiple different strains from the dispensary. The dispensaries are excellent at educating patients, recommending different strains based on their condition. And I always recommend start slow and low, and then don't drive, start at night, and see how you feel. And so far, that model that has worked well for us and for the patients.
Now, I found some interesting things in dealing with hundreds of patients over the years, that some patients actually have the opposite effect. If you believe that a sativa is going to keep you up and awake and so forth, and indicas are going to put you to sleep, have you found that some patients have the opposite effect on these
I did.
different strains? So that's pretty interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting. Everybody's chemical makeup is different, and I have found that there are some very different responses to these strains. Some patients get hyper and can fall asleep, while others fall asleep really quickly from just 1 or 2 puffs of the cannabis.
And doctor, what would you recommend to somebody who, let's say, is having, maybe they took a little bit too much? Because I know I tell people to take 1 or 2 puffs, stop, wait 20 minutes, and see how you feel. You don't roll up a whole joint and sit there and smoke it. That's first of all unnecessary, because you might get the effects that you need without smoking a whole joint. And marijuana, cannabis is expensive at these dispensaries, so that's certainly one thing to tell the patient. So what are people paying per? Is it a per gram price, or are they buying it by the quarters and eighths? How is it sold at the dispensaries?
It's sold by the eighths.
So you can't go in and buy a gram.
No, the cannabis comes in prepackaged Ziploc bags. It's very clean, very well organized. It's very exact measurements, and this way, patients are able to get various different strains. They don't have to spend too much money in case if the strain they pick is not the one that works best for them.
Right. What are they charging in Jersey for an eighth, let's say?
I think it varies on the strain. It goes from anywhere from $80 to $110.
$80 to $100 for an eighth.
For a quarter, I thought.
For a quarter. Okay. That's sort of in line with some other states. That makes sense. Obviously, the more competition that these states have, maybe the prices will come down and so forth. And of course, there's all kinds of expenses, when you start your, business and so forth. So, anything else that you'd like to tell us about South Jersey Alternative Medicine? It sounds like you're doing a great job. And do you know how many patients are in the program total in New Jersey at this point?
In New Jersey, I would say probably about 7,000. I'm not sure exactly the current number. One thing that I like to say is that it's really an amazing option for many patients suffering with chronic intractable pain, spasms, Crohn's, multiple sclerosis. I've seen thousands of patients in this practice over the last 3 years who are taking opioids and sleeping pills and going through various high-risk interventions, and are not getting the results they're looking for. I think that the cannabis is truly an amazing option for many people, and the stereotypes and the preconceptions that they, believe are really not accurate. And if anyone has any desire just to come in, have a face-to-face discussion with us or one of our staff members, we're always happy to educate patients. There's no obligations to enroll, to join, just to get more educated. And we're hosting a large, really well-organized event in Washington Township on May 25th at 6:30, which is going to be free and no charge for all the patients or future candidates. And if anybody has any interest, then we are more than happy.
So if you have interest in that free event, go to your website, which is, let's see, where your website is what? The South Jersey Alternative Medicine. You can actually Google South Jersey Alternative Medicine in Turnersville, New Jersey, and get information about the free event coming up next month in May.
Or they can also call our number, which is 609-208-8969. And Audrey is our program coordinator, so we'll be very happy to discuss the event and provide all details.
Fabulous. Now, one more thing before I go and let you go. There's a lot of information on the internet about how people, since you're a pain management doctor, how patients are getting off of opioids and using cannabis. Are you able to help people at South Jersey Alternative Medicine do that? Have you helped people get off of opioids into cannabis, and how easy is that?
I think that for me, that's been one of the biggest successes of the program, is helping patients get off opioids or significantly reduce opioids and other sedatives.
That's one of the most positive things that's happening with cannabis, and of course opioids are just so devastating to people. I mean, they're even saying that the rock and roll artist Prince may have had a big opioid problem. So it's something that is affecting a lot of families, a lot of people. So I thank you for helping people try to get off of opioids and using cannabis. So Dr. Andrew Medvedovsky, I thank you. You're from South Jersey Alternative Medicine. People, check it out if you're in New Jersey. And I thank you for educating us today about what you have to offer the patients of New Jersey.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to speaking with all future candidates in New Jersey. Thank you.
My pleasure. And we'll be right back after these words.
Well, they blew up the chicken man in Philly last night, and they blew up his house too. Down on the boardwalk, they're getting ready for a fight. Gonna see what them racket boys can do. And there's trouble busting in from out of state, and the DA can't get no relief. There's a rumble down on the promenade, and the gambling commission's hanging on by the skin of their teeth. Yeah, everything dies, that's a fact. Baby, everything that dies someday comes back. Put your makeup on, put your hair up pretty. Meet me tonight in Atlantic City. Meet me tonight in Atlantic City. Well, I had a job, put my money away, but I got debt that no one is and can pay. So I pulled what I had from the Central Trust, and I bought us 2 tickets on that Coastline City bus. Now everything dies, that's a fact, but maybe everything that dies someday comes back. Put your makeup on, fix your hair up pretty. Meet me tonight in Atlantic City. Meet me tonight in Atlantic City. Now our love may have died and our love may be cold, but with you I'll forever stay. We're going out where the sand ends in the gold. Put on your stockings, baby, 'cause tonight is gonna be cold. Everything dies, I guess that's a fact, but maybe everything that dies someday comes back. They say everything dies, I guess maybe that's a fact. But what if everything that dies someday comes back?
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Well, I want to thank Reggie Gaudino and Steephill Labs again for talking to us, finishing up our interview that we did a few weeks ago. Also, Dr. Andrew Medvedovsky from South Jersey Alternative Medicine. Thank you for telling us what's happening in New Jersey. A little message for people here in New Mexico, and especially for Ultra Health, to those people. You know what? Stay out of our closets. Stay out of our bedrooms. Stay out of our backyards. Don't dare try to take away the rights of our patients to grow their own medicine. You've got 5 dispensaries. You're opening up in Vegas. You're got places in Arizona. We're allowed to grow our own. You're going to try to take that away from us, you're going to have some big effing problems from a lot of people. Don't get so greedy, you guys. You want to come on the show and talk about it? You have an open invitation. Stay away from the PPLs. I want to thank my 2 radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you'd like to, you know where to go if you want to hear where we are. MMJRadio.com. We're available everywhere. YouTube, Ellis Love 88.
Vietnam,